Hey, what's up, folks? Welcome back to On Texas Football, and welcome back to a special edition of Sunday School. I know I told you guys that we wouldn't do Sunday schools until the off season, and when the off season was done, we were going to focus on in-season, obviously week-to-week matchups. But it is a bye week, and since it's an off week, I kind of treat it like the off season. So we're going to bring back Sunday School, brought to you by good friends over at Duck Camp, as a matter of fact. So shout out to Duck Camp for bringing back Sunday School just during the bye weeks. And I guess I'll do it again next bye week. So now I've kind of made it a thing. I didn't want to make it a thing, but it's become a thing. All right. So this Sunday School, we'll get into what we've seen that's worked for the Texas passing game specifically in the first four games, and maybe some successful concepts that Texas probably could and should rely more on going into SEC play, especially to get the kind of the best version of Arch Manning. The Arch Manning we saw versus Sam Houston State, the Arch Manning that we saw in the fourth quarter versus Ohio State, the Arch Manning that we saw versus San Jose State. We want that more of that Arch Manning. So I'll talk about how I think Texas can achieve that. We'll get into that here in this edition of Sunday School. All right, let's start, because I've identified four. Actually, I take that back. Yeah, I've identified five concepts. All right, that I think in the passing game that have shown a disproportionate amount of success in the passing game for Texas. So essentially what I started looking at was explosive plays, right? I go back to the old Bill Walsh quote about explosive plays, right? That the team that can win the explosive play margin by one play, they usually win the game like 60% of the time. You win it by 2+ plays. You're talking about winning the game 70%+ of the time, right? And it's all about being able really to minimize the amount of mistakes. And you don't really do it by, hopefully Texas can do it by just playing more disciplined football, but ultimately you do it by minimizing the amount of plays that you need to score. That's what an explosive play will do for you, right? You get an explosive play, a chunk yardage play, instead of a 10, 11, 12, 13 play drive, you end up with a 5, 6, 7 play drive. And so I looked at 10+ yard pass plays and 20+ yard pass plays. And I think when you look at 10+ yard pass plays, Texas is like 57th or something like that. 20+ yard pass play, just so you get perspective on this, Texas is 32nd. They got 15 of those. I believe they got 34 10+ yard pass plays, 15 20+ yard pass plays. If you look at actually 30+ yard pass plays, a little sidebar here before we get to the breakdown, they're actually top 10 in 30+ yard pass plays. They got 10 of them on the season. Yeah, a little surprising, actually. And tied for top 5 in college football in that regard. So it's just weird. But I started looking at those explosive plays, specifically 10 and 20+ yard passing plays, and started looking for trends, patterns, right? What has worked really well for them? And when I looked at the 34 10+ yard pass plays that Texas has had on the season so far, and like I said, it's pretty amazing actually when you look at this number. If you look at flood concepts, all right, for those who don't know what a flood concept is, it's basically when you inundate one area of the field with the majority of your receivers, period, your eligible receivers, and you usually do it in basically in three different levels. You do it short, intermediate, and a deep receiving threat, and you do it all on one side of the field, one area of the field, and they call that a flood concept or flood variation. So that's what we're talking about here. So out of Texas 34 10+ yard pass plays, 8 of them have been flood variations, which is pretty good. It's only accounted for 8% of your play share, and yet it's almost 24% of your 10+ yard pass plays. I like the flood concepts. If you look at 20+ yard pass plays, you got 15 20+ yard pass plays. 4 of them are flood concepts and variations. That's over 26%. So you're only using it 8% of the time, yet it is easily around 25% of your 10 and 20+ yard pass plays. I want more flood concepts. And it's difficult for a defense because you allocate a certain amount of resources to make sure you have the field evenly defended. You know what I mean? You want balance. But and there are different ways you can get to flood, right? You can get to a flood concept from a spread formation. You just got to take the receivers from one side and make sure you're dragging them, or you're running over unders or deep crossers to the other side of the field to threaten that side of the field. And Sark loves deep crossing routes. I always call those rainbow crossers. He loves crossing concepts for receivers, and that a lot of times can lead to flooding one side of the field. So I just throwing it out there. I would use more flood concepts for Texas in SEC play. If you go look at all of basically, it's strange to say this and just throw it out there. If you go look at the big plays they had in flood concept with these flood concepts, honestly, they almost all of them came in the San Jose State game and the Sam Houston State game. UTEP, which was I would say it was a pretty good test defensively for Texas, and Ohio State, of course, which is one of the best defenses in the country. Texas was not as effective with those flood concepts. They didn't run as many of them, period. So I don't know if it was the apple, I remember that kind of thing. I don't know, the chicken or the egg kind of thing. Like I'm not sure if they were not running more of those flood concepts because they knew they wouldn't work, or they just didn't run as much of them because they didn't have as much opportunity in those matchups. Like, I'm not sure. Like, that's something I don't know. But I would say that most of them came in those other two contests against Sam Houston State and San Jose State. All right, here's another concept that I really liked when I started looking at the explosive plays for Texas in the passing game. Of course, the Sark screens. Whether you're talking about bubble screens, swing screens, jailbreak screens, throwback screens, empty jailbreak screens, tight end screen, smoke screens. I mean, they come in all shapes, sizes, and Sark utilizes screens and design screens as well as anybody in college football. And if you go look at their 10-plus yard plays, all right, you're talking about for Sark, first of all, 20% of your 10-plus yard plays came on screens, and 10-plus yard passing plays came on screens, and around 20% of your 20-plus yard pass plays came on screens, some variety, some variation of the screen. Now, you do run a lot of screens. Like, you run screens probably 17% of the time. Around that number is the screen rate for Arch Manning based on Pro Football Focus numbers. So you run a lot of screens, but still it does track and it aligns with, and actually you could argue you're getting more return on your investment because your explosive play rate and your 10-plus yard pass play rate out of those screens is 20% or higher. So getting a good return on that investment, and not saying you can just run a ton of screens. I mean, Sark is probably running 2 to 3 screens a game. I mean, you probably can run 4 to 5 screens a game, in my opinion. So I'm not saying that Sark needs to over-invest in that concept, but considering the return on that investment, I'd run more screens if I was Texas. Easy completion for Arch, really high completion percentage, and it gets him into a groove and into a rhythm, and you can get the ball into the hands of your playmakers on the outside. Really, guys like Ryan Wingo, when you're talking about DeAndre Moore, Dalen McCutcheon on one of those screens, or your running backs in the swing screen, or your tight end screens. So I would run more of those in SEC play to really juice and boost the passing game. Another concept that I like that Texas had success with are double moves. You say, what's a double move? And a double move essentially is 2 routes in one, is how I describe it. It's 2 routes in one. Where you're talking about a hitch and go, slant and go, whether you're talking about a drag wheel or you're talking about an out and up. It's just they combine two routes, and the intention is to deceive the defense into aggressively defending and attacking the first portion of the double move. Right. And so I think that no matter which way you're looking at. Now, Texas hadn't run a ton of them, but I think they've actually had some success running the double move. Essentially, if you look at it, that wide delay that Texas loves, the wide leak that they've scored on twice already this year, Jordan Washington and Jack Injuries, it is a double move. You can make the argument it's a triple move. It's a delayed release by the tight end initially. So he's 1/1000, whatever it is, his delayed release. And then he runs a drag route across the field to basically deceive the linebackers. The linebacker depth there, those guys dropping. They assume it's a drag route. They may pass it off to the next guy as a drag route. And if they decide to run with it, there's a up element to it, a drag wheel or a drag seam route that also can beat the match coverage if a defender decides they're going to match him. They're going to match that drag route. So it's, like I said, it's a double move. It's just very well designed play design, but it's just a double move. And Texas scored on that twice. I love the element of the double move. As a defender, I can tell you it works. A lot of times those guys are open. It's just whether the quarterback can hit them on the double move. The guy usually creates separation on the move. And this is the thing about the double move. It takes time to develop those types of routes. And first of all, you got Arch, who can extend plays, right? He can extend a play, does that really well. And his pressure to sack rate right now, a little sidebar, is around 7%. Guys, that is top 15 best pressure to sack percentage right now in college football. He's really good at avoiding pressure and avoiding sacks. Just throwing it out there. But that's a guy that can extend the play. We know that because he's got the legs to do it. His average time to throw, 3.1 seconds. Also, top 15 longest average time to throw right now in college football. Because Sark wants the vertical routes with him, right? Chicks dig the long ball, and so does Arch. Most of your double moves are going to end up being vertical, deep shots downfield. You need time for those to develop. 3.1 seconds is plenty of time. And he does a great job of avoiding sacks and avoiding pressure to allow those routes to develop. I think it's something Texas should pursue more of. And on a deep ball, he's completing over 52% of his deep passes, 20 yards or more down the field. He's actually more accurate on deep balls down the field, 20 yards or more, than he is on intermediate passes, which is kind of wacky. I got to go back and see how many quarterbacks that's the case for. Intermediate is tough, but the deep ball is considered easily the lowest percentage pass you can throw. You got the biggest return on the investment, but still the lowest percentage of success, but not for Arch because Arch digs a long ball. So I would run more double moves. 5 of your 34 10-plus yard plays have come on double moves. So I think you should find a way to weave in more of them in the game. I do think Sark tries to weave in a few. Like I said, he loves the wide delay. He ran the hitch and go against Sam Houston State, I believe, in the red zone for Ryan Wingo. He runs the out and up. He likes that with the tight ends. Sometimes they make it look like a wheel route, but it only looks like a wheel route when the running backs run it. They usually like to run it as an out and up if you actually watch the body language of the receiver. So I would run more of that. I'll throw it out there. All right, here's another concept I love that they haven't really thrown out there a ton. They're called switch concepts. Now, switch concepts are where you have 2 receivers or 3 receivers, multiple receivers, I should say, that either as a switch release where they cross paths and they switch release pass, all right, before they go vertically upfield. They call that a switch release. If they are already running vertically upfield and then they switch vertical planes or intersect vertically and cross pass vertically while already downfield, they call it a switch route. Switch release, switch route. Either way, it's trying to force either a rub or a pick, all right, on the defenders to create space, or miscommunication between DBs, because we have to be able to communicate with one another about how we're going to defend basically a switch concept, which is usually two receivers, like I said, they're intersecting at one point, either before the vertical release or once they're vertically downfield. Switch route, switch release, right? Same thing, very different, but still presents a problem to the defense. And with these switch variations, they have three of their 34 10-plus yard plays with switch concept. You're like, oh, well, that's only three. That's not that big a deal. I agree with you, but if you look at Archie's passing touchdowns, 3 of his 9 passing touchdowns have come on switch variations, which is that's 33% of your passing touchdowns. So I think it's worth exploring, because as a DB, I can tell you they're hell to deal with these switches. Switch routes are tougher than switch releases, because initially you have a plan for a switch release, but a switch route downfield, it's already determined what you're going to defend, and those can just be held on the secondary. Takes a little while for it maybe to develop, but still, as we've talked about, Texas, they plan on vertical shots downfield based on how long Arch is holding on to the football. So just kind of looking at it, just kind of sum up, 21 of your 34 10-plus yard pass plays that you've utilized either flood concepts and variations, screen concepts and variations, double moves, and or a switch concept. That's over 61% of your 10-plus yard pass plays. 4 concepts. Pretty good. I mean, it's like, and like you're running them a lot, not running them a ton. It's not like that's half your offense or anything like that. I would increase the usage and the totals of those. Let's go one more thing. All right, one more. I got one more for you. Oh, and by the way, 9 of your 15 20-plus yard pass plays are also one of those 4 or one of those 4 concepts, that's 60%. So no matter how you're looking at it, 60% of your explosive plays in the passing game, 10 and 20-plus yard plays, have been one of those 4 concepts, or combine them, which is what I love, right? The combination of. All right, targets to bunch, my last thing, and I'm done. Targets to bunch. Bunch formation and that's usually when you get a lot of switch concepts and switch variations, is when you have closely clustered groups of receivers. And it could be bunch, which is like 3 trips with 3 wide receivers, and they're really close together. Sometimes Sark runs what I call a trident with a tip, or a triangle bunch. It can be stacked twins, where they're stacked like this. There's one, they're really close together, but they're stacked. They call that stacked twins. They can be really tight, really right next to each other, off the line of scrimmage, or both kind of off the line of scrimmage, and they call that tight. Or they can be condensed set, where they're really close together, close to the line of scrimmage, and all the receivers are condensed. Sark loves condensed formations. All right, so any of those, they got a lot of variations of bunch formations. I've been tracking it from Ohio State, because really, when you looked at Ohio State and all the big plays they had, they were out of bunch formation. They would motion to a bunch formation, or motion to a stack. And I started thinking, okay, Arch is cooking with it. The 32-yard touchdown to Livingston, the 28-yarder to Wingo, the 30-yarder to Jack Andrews, they were all targets to bunch, or closely clustered groups of receivers. And 3 yards is just kind of just what I was taught, within 3 yards. Anything else, all right, 5 yards, like, all right, that's pretty traditional. That's customary. That's usually what you see. But when they start getting them closer together, as Coach Aquino would say, they're up to something. They're up to something. And he's right. They're up to something. You're up to something. You're putting them together like that for a reason. There's a purpose to it. I need to know what it is, or I should be able to decipher what it is. Okay, so out of your 34 10-plus yard pass plays, 10 of them have been targets to bunch. So you're right around 30%. You're a little under 30%, above 29%. But 60% of your 20-plus yard pass plays have been targets to bunch. Targets to closely clustered groups of receivers within like 3 yards. And you say, what does that do? Well, it's an easier release for the receivers because DBs have to respect the bunch because I might get picked, I might get rubbed. And so usually DBs have to play levels. So we'll tango it or we'll banjo it, whatever different names for it, means that we're going to zone it up. I'll play one guy will play the inside cut, one guy will play the outside cut, one guy may play the first cut, one guy will play the next cut, one guy may take the deepest cut, one guy takes it all depends on how you want to play. Different ways to play it. You can man it up, say I'm gonna go down and press this guy, and that's my guy, and you take the other guy and you take 5-6 yards to make sure that we don't get rubbed or picked. It's a ton of different ways to defend it. But you force the DBs to communicate, which means a lot of times they can miscommunicate. Right? A lot of y'all in relationships, whether you're married relationships, how often do you end up miscommunicating? Trying to say something and then, that's not what what I meant to say. Did you understand what I meant to say and what I said? They're doing things. Happens all the time in secondaries. Happens all the time in football. It's communication, but it was a miscommunication. And that's what you're trying to facilitate. All right, with those bunch formations. So either you get an easier release or free release for the wide receivers. You force miscommunication, and I think it cleans up the read for the quarterback a little bit too. So here's what your stats are when Arch targets bunch formation, or Texas quarterbacks. I just did Texas quarterbacks, but obviously Matthew Caldwell hadn't got that much action. 75% completion percentage, over 14 yards per attempt. Your first down touchdown rate. This is the rate of first downs and touchdowns. Obviously, you're at over 45%. Your explosive play rate is at 28%. And like I said, 60% of your 20-plus yard plays, damn near 30% of your 10-plus yard pass plays, and your 20-plus yard pass plays have come on targets to bunch. And it's only 27% of your targets, but it's 60% of your 20-plus yard explosive pass plays. And it's 30% of your 10-plus yard pass plays. Targets a bunch more. And also, it would make it easier to execute switch variations and switch releases and switch routes downfield. It would also, I think, make it a little bit easier in your screen game. You can easily run screens out of those closely clustered groups of receivers. And you can run flood concepts, especially if you're running bunch. You bunch on one side of the field and you can flood on that side of the field. So all the concepts that are working really well for Texas in the passing game can be, I think, maximized even more and weaponized even more with bunch formations and targets to those bunch formations. All right, there you go. I'm done. All right, there you go. That's my Sunday school during the season. I'll do it again on the next bye week, but hopefully I'll be talking about, how good Texas is doing and maybe utilizing those very concepts. All right, thank you to Matthew behind the scenes, doing a great job. But let's thank our friends over at Duck Camp and let you know about them, and thankful for them for sponsoring this edition of Sunday School. Duck Camp, folks, trust me, if I got a lot of Duck Camp gear that I'm breaking out for the season. But if you're like me, you appreciate the burnt orange, and our friends at Duck Camp, they actually got a color really close to burnt orange, that clay colorway over there. Duck Camp gear is for the folks who live for being out there, whether that's in a duck blind at sunrise or on the 40 acres for a Saturday kickoff. Born right here in the great city of Austin, Duck Camp builds best-in-class hunting and fishing apparel that works just as well for a full day in the field as it does for a long day of tailgating. From sun protection shirts that keep you cool during those early season scorchers to their iconic game series hats that feel like instant classics, Duck Camp gear is ready for football season, hunting season, and every season in between. Get out there and stay out there and hook 'em horn. Shop Duck Camp at duckcamp.com. Thank you very much to our friends at Duck Camp, and thank you to all you guys out there for watching and for listening. And until next time, I'm Lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers. Hook 'em horns.